Okay, so what I thought I'd do, because it's a short sutta, I can run through it first, and then we can go back through it and make sense of it. So this is the sutta called With Rohitassa. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then, late at night, the glorious god Rohitassa, lighting up the entire Jeta's Grove, went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood at one side, and said to him, Sir, is it possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there is no being born, growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn? Reverend, this is the Buddha speaking, Reverend, I say it's not possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there is no being born, growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn. It's incredible, sir. It's amazing how well said this was by the Buddha. Once upon a time, I was a seer called Rohitassa of the Boja people. I was a skywalker with psychic powers. I was as fast as a light arrow, easily shot across the shadow of a palm tree by a well-trained expert archer with a strong bow. My stride was such that it could span from the Eastern Ocean to the Western Ocean. Having such speed and stride, this wish came to me. I will reach the end of the world by traveling. I traveled for my whole life span of 100 years, pausing only to eat and drink, go to the toilet, and sleep to dispel weariness. And I passed away along the way, never reaching the end of the world. It's incredible, sir. It's amazing how well said this was by the Buddha. Reverend, this is the Buddha speaking, Reverend, I say it's not possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there is no being born, growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn. But I also say there is no making an end of suffering without reaching the end of the world. For it is in this fathom-long carcass, with its perceptions and mind, that I describe the world, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. And then the Buddha ends the discourse with some verse. The end of the world can never be reached by traveling, but without reaching the end of the world, there's no release from suffering. So an intelligent person, understanding the world, has completed the spiritual journey and gone to the end of the world. A calm one, knowing the end of the world, does not long for this world or the next. So there's a lot there in such a short sutta. But it's giving, the intention with this sutta is to give a large picture. It's not focusing on details, it's giving a large picture. And then, obviously, in terms of a deeper understanding of the practice, we can get into the depths, the weeds of what has to be done to realize this strange concept, the end of the world. What on earth can he mean by that? So let's take it line by line. Peter, you've still got your hand up. Is that the same hand, or is that a new hand? Thank you. Right, let's take it line by line. At one time, the Buddha.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Sawati in Jeta Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. So for those that don't know, Anathapindika was the Buddha's biggest donor, his biggest, not to say fan, I can't find the right word, but yeah, he supported the Buddha tremendously. Sponsor, thank you, whoever said that, giving him Jetta Grove for his monks to stay in. And then we have this very curious next sentence. Then late at night, the glorious god Rohitassa, lighting up the entire Jetta's Grove, went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and he said to him, "Sir, is it possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there is no being born, growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn?" Okay, so what we have to consider here, Peter touched on it, it's firstly, we have to understand that there is more, in terms of the Buddha's teaching, there is a lot more to the world than our current materialistic trend in our society will acknowledge. And for people that have got sufficiently calm in meditation, begin to recognize that there are vastly more layers and levels and dimensions to experience and the mind than previously we had suspected. In society, you look on YouTube, for instance, there are people that play with this idea of out-of-body experiences that they have, especially when the body falls asleep and the mind is still awake, and people report having popped out of their body and become skillful at being able to do this. There is a big body of literature on the periphery of society, but it is there, which supports this idea of there being more layers and levels to mind and conscious experience. So if we're dealing with the Buddha's teaching, and the Buddha is explicit about this, that there are many lives that we go through, there are many different dimensions to experience, vastly more than we're perhaps comfortable with or have had any information about in our Western society. But if you're going to approach the Buddha's teaching, you have to understand that this is all baked in, and it's all a fundamental part of his entire teaching. His entire teaching is that there is this continuous process of rebirth, and there are many, many more levels and dimensions to life than we perhaps are aware of. But all of his teaching, everything in his teaching, can be discovered through direct personal application to the practice. So there's nothing that he's talking about or that are recorded in the suttas that are outside our ability to come to understand directly. So there does have to be an element of a willingness to remain open-minded in order to get the significance of this interaction between the Buddha and a glorious god, Rohitassa. Now, so as a question, maybe someone can answer this, why is it so beneficial in the context of this sutta and what the Buddha is trying to describe and explain? Why is it so beneficial to have this Dewa, or this God-like being, appear in this sutta to ask this question? Why is it so relevant? Jim, hello.
Hi, Paul. He seems to be interplaying, seeking things in the world and seeking the end of the material world, that you can go on and on in the physical universe or in any interest or any subject area or any skill, but you'll never get to the end of it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's the fact that it's coming from somebody, a being, if you like, that is not of this earthly plane. Therefore, they're looking at it from a different vantage point. And essentially, what Rohitassa is saying in his little monologue is that I'm looking at this from a vastly different perspective, and I'm still caught in the trap. So, despite being a glorious God, and despite having had a previous life as a Skywalker, and I immediately get Star Wars references there. I apologize, but I was a Skywalker with psychic powers. I was as fast as an arrow. My stride could span from the East Ocean to the Western Ocean. So we're dealing with somebody who is looking at this from a very different vantage point. And still he's saying essentially it's unsatisfactory. I cannot get to the point. What do we mean by the end of the world then? Why is Rohitassa, with all this amazing capacity and ability to look at life from this in this completely different way, what's he complaining about, Dave?
I sort of understood that as Nibbana, the end of the world, the sort of complete, yeah, finishing.
Okay, but that does make it sound like some kind of annihilation, and we will have to come to that because it isn't. But what is everyone complaining about? Liz, what do you think? Yeah, you got to unmute yourself.
Fine, yes. I was thinking of it as he's in some way he's still experiencing unsatisfactoriness.
Yeah.
And he's saying, even though I can do all this amazing skywalking, it's not what it's about. So he's traveled wherever he's traveled and he's still not come to the end of it.
So what we're really, yeah, exactly that. So what we're really talking about here is becoming, like this process of attempting to reach a point where everything is finally right and everything is as I want it to be. And so by introducing this as a being on another plane of existence, if you like, with a different vantage point to look at all of this, it's demonstrating that it's not just this physical material domain. It is all domains. It is all possible, conceivable states of being. That you're still on the treadmill. That wherever you find yourself and whatever it is that you've accumulated and brought together in order to live a happy, peaceful existence, it's still going to get old, it's still going to decay, it's still going to pass away. And you are going to pass away from that realm. And you're going to be decanted somewhere else. And you're going to try it all over again. And then you're going to be decanted somewhere else and somewhere else. There is literally no end to samsara. Sally, hello.
I was just going to say, is it the eternal wheel of being caught up in samsara, which is what you just said, literally, as I put my hand up.
It is, okay. It is exactly that. Well done. Yeah. It is exactly that. And we'll find that the way he describes things is it is absolutely tied to the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering. We attempt to resolve so life is inherently suffering. It's inherently unsatisfactory. That's really why we've got to get to the end of it. But we keep trying to get to the end of the world through using worldly means, which means sense pleasures, becoming, or trying to keep everything the same. And at any level of being, even if you're in the most blissful existence and you've got all the skills nailed down and you're a really skillful being who has understood all these different realms, you do not find that point of rest. You're always going to be decanted out of that into another existence. Giuseppe.
Hiya, Paul.
Hey.
Just a quick one there, because that totally hit a nail on the head. Recently, I have absolutely been thinking of, for some strange reason, about this whole concept of the end of the world, because you do think, the universe is infinite. So then, and I've been speaking to my daughters who are at school and stuff, and it's like, how do you get that concept in your head, of, well, there can't be an end, because if there's an end, then there's something else. But we seem to be really hardwired into thinking, oh, there has to be something which is the end, and then that end will give me an answer of some kind. And then as I was thinking that and you were saying all those things, I then suddenly thought, oh my goodness, yeah, like psychotherapy. And I don't know if this is now taking off on another tangent of craziness now, but just how there's always someone trying to give you an answer, and then you try and find an answer, and then you just and then the mind wants to go back. Oh, why does that issue occur? And then you go back and you go back, and you can go on forever. Sorry, that was just sort of one of those.
I hear your frustration. And yeah, that's the problem, because all these things, all these attempts, whether they're physical attempts to actually travel to somewhere where you can be permanently happy, or if it's a psychological traveling to try to sift through all the experiences you've ever had in order to put them all to bed so you can finally be happy. The views you hold, what about these utopian ideals? Like the latest one is that AI is going to bring us utopia, where there'll be non-scarcity and no one will need to have to work. But how is that a utopia if you've got nothing to do? Is it so? And this is the thing about the first noble truth, as life as being inherently suffering, which is to say, like, the actual building blocks that go to make any conscious experience are fundamentally unsatisfactory. So it's like having a piece of cloth. If you've got a piece of blue cloth, it's always going to, whatever you create out of that is always going to be blue. And if the fabric of existence itself is unsatisfactory, then whatever you make out of it is going to be unsatisfactory. So attempting to use the things of the world in order to create this permanent state of happiness and finally reaching that point, beyond history or whatever, it's impossible, because the stuff you're using itself is fundamentally flawed. It's transient. So anything you make out of transient phenomena is going to be transient, and therefore you're always going to be on that mouse's wheel, on the hamster wheel, sort of chasing the cheese, and you never ever truly get there. And the recognition, and yeah, society is always reinforcing the sense of, well, that's how you find happiness. And it is possible, if you're a skillful human being, to find an approximation of that. You get the career, you get the wealth, you get the beautiful wife or the handsome husband, you get the beautiful kids, you got the lovely house. Everything's, you work so hard to get everything exactly as you think it ought to be, and then you have a heart attack and you die. That's that. And because our worldview is often limited to just this one existence, we don't countenance the idea that this could just repeat and repeat and repeat in other forms, in other ways, but still with this underlying issue which is never actually looked at. So essentially, you can never get to the end of the world through travel of whatever kind. Okay, so, and that's exactly what the Buddha says. So Rohitassa repeats that it's amazing that the Buddha is able to see it in the same way, and the Buddha replies, I say it's not possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there is no being born, growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn. Okay, so that's just re-emphasizing what we've described. But I also say there's no making an end of suffering without reaching the end of the world. And of course, why is it everyone is trying to reach the end of the world? They're trying to reach this point where everything is absolutely as it as it should be, and it's permanently so, which sounds like death to me, but anyway. But we have to find the end of the world in order to be free of suffering, is what the Buddha's saying. This is such a clever paragraph right here. Sally, you've got a puzzled expression on your face.
Yeah. So when he's talking about traveling,
Yeah.
is that traveling on different levels? Could he be referring to traveling as in the craving that we have to get to the end of the world as well? So could traveling be all sorts of different levels? Could you interpret it ways?
Absolutely. It's essentially craving for life to be different than it is. So it's starting from the assumption that life as it is unsatisfactory. We're dissatisfied, we're unfulfilled, something's missing. There's a sense of separation. Whatever it is that drives us into action to try to reach completion, to reach that point of saturation, permanent saturation, whatever it is that we're looking for, whether it's through engaging in sense desires, whether it's trying to become something, or whether it's trying to stop things from changing. It's still all activity designed to try to create some kind of permanent happiness, permanent sense of connection, unity, however it is. It's like it can manifest physically, psychologically, emotionally, religiously, politically, there's philosophically, there's just no end to it. Yeah. But it's it's metaphorical. This, Rohitassa is giving us this metaphorical idea of this endless wandering of trying to find that point of completion. And what the Buddha is saying is, well, you've got to find that. If you want to end suffering, you've got to find that point of completion. You've got to find that end point to the world. Where does the world stop? It's a really interesting question. Where does it stop? And what the Buddha is saying is, well, let me open it up. Who thinks they know where the Buddha is saying the world ends, the world stops? Les, hello.
Oh, there. It's right where you are.
Exactly.
There's no need to go anywhere. It's just becoming aware of what is at that moment, in that second, if you like. Being present with that is the end of the world.
Yes. Yes. Like we have to define what we mean by what we mean by the world a little bit. There are levels and levels to it, but primarily we're saying the world in terms of this endless, the sense of self as being separate, being decanted into an environment. That world, the world of duality, the world of Bradford and Avon and Paul and Les and London and wherever, that world, planet Earth, that world, rebirth into other dimensions, other realms of existence, that world. That world is the one that has to come to a stop. And yeah, absolutely. He says, for it is in this fathom-long carcass, and look at his choice of words there, with its perceptions and mind, or consciousness, if you wish, that I describe the world, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. So there's quite a lot to get stuck into there. So why do you think what is he describing when he says this fathom-long carcass? And why does he describe it thus? Dave, hello.
Yeah, I think the fathom-long carcass is this body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he describes it as a carcass as a sort of way of engendering a sense of disgust.
Why would he need to do that or want to do that, do you think?
Because we tend to be quite attached to our bodies and how we look.
Exactly. So much of our attempt to find happiness is predicated on the body itself. But this body, for all of us, even the youngest amongst us, we're talking only a few years till it totally turns to dust. Wow. And yet, because everything is predicated on this one existence, then the body has to be right. It has to be a beautiful thing. It has to be something that you could admire and something you can like. And we use it in order to gather in and feast on all these sensory experiences. So there's so much predicated on the body, and he's saying, look, it's a walking carcass. It's a walking, talking carcass. Can't you see? To try to give a sense of, like, you've got to lose the attachment to the body. It's not me. It's not mine. It's not myself. Liz, hello.
I was just going to say what you said, which is it reinforces the idea of me and me being separate.
Yes.
So part of the whole problem.
Yes.
I know you said that much better than me.
Oh, come. But yeah, exactly that. But it's not just body. He also talks about, well, it's translated as perception and mind as well. So it is in this fathom-long carcass with its perceptions and consciousness that I describe the world. Okay. So it's not just body, it's mind and body. Nama Rupa. Okay. And that therefore it's in this fathom-long carcass with its perceptions and mind, so mind and body, that I describe the world, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. Now, what does the end of that sentence, what does that remind you of in the Buddha's teaching? I describe the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the practice that leads to the cessation of the world. What does that remind you of? Mark?
Four Noble Truths.
Four Noble Truths. So his first discourse that he gave the monks, he describes suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So he is directly equating the world with suffering. Yeah? So the world, with all its ambition and aspiration and the attempt to gain some kind of lasting, genuine peace and fulfillment in the world, is suffering. And the whole purpose of his training is, see, because when we talk about the end of the world, it sounds like some kind of annihilation, and all that will be left would be nothing. But it's what we're talking about is the cessation of the ignorant belief and grasping after the world as being all there is. And through the practicing the Noble Eightfold Path and following the path, we come to realize that there is indeed something beyond the world as we ordinarily understand it. But it can't be described ordinarily, because this is why I describe it as infinite mystery, because it's infinite in the sense of being uncontainable, and it's mystery as in unknowable. So the moment we start applying words to it and describing it, we're bringing it into the mundane, the finite, and it's no longer the beyond of the world. It's just elements of the world again. So it's not consciousness. So it's what lies beyond consciousness. It's what lies beyond perception. It's what lies beyond our understanding of the world as we enter into the training. So the point that he's making is like, we're obsessed with the world, we're obsessed with the body and mind, we're obsessed with concepts, we're obsessed with perceptions. Interesting that he brings out perception of all the various aspects of mind. All the other aspects of mind are treated singularly in the word mind, but he brings out perception specifically, which is a really interesting thing to consider and reflect on. Why is he bringing out perception particularly? It's because perception is that aspect of mind which labels, which delineates, which separates out. And we're talking about this separated out world that is going to be essentially be transcended by discovering what lies beyond perception. Okay. So going back to Les's point, at last, the mistake everyone makes is in the belief that what they're looking, so there is a fundamental, some kind of deep recognition in human beings that there is indeed a cessation of suffering, that there is indeed this peace and happiness which is dependable and is lasting. But the mistake everyone makes is to look for it within the world. Right? And what the Buddha is saying is, actually, the peace and happiness and genuine lasting fulfillment that you are looking for is already here. You're just ignoring it. It's ignorance that gives rise to passionately craving for life to be different than it is, which just perpetuates the cycle. And so what we're doing, what the Buddha is instructing us to do, and what we're doing as meditators is turning it all on its head. And instead of trying to travel, we are seeking to explore what already is. And so we've got this fathom-long carcass, we've got the sense bases, ear, eye, nose, tongue, body. We have mind with its perceptions, consciousness. And our task is to investigate the nature of reality. And through doing that, we discover that the world we thought was there in a concrete, definite way turns out to be the most marvelous illusion. The end of the world is not some kind of final act of destruction. It's the recognition that everything is arising and passing away due to conditions, that solid, separate world we think is there is the most marvelous illusion. It's got its uses, so it's not destroyed. It's just understood to be not the definite, concrete thing that we thought it was. That's the essential point of practicing insight meditation, of looking at transience, the transient nature of things arising and passing away. Yeah. So I realize I've been talking rather a lot in a monologue. Has anyone got any questions so far? Anything they'd like to talk about this? Mark, hello.
Hi, yeah, not a question as such, but the other thing, an observation really. The other thing this sutta says to me is that it's you don't have to be a Skywalker or whatever. You don't have to be a super being, that can exist in multiple dimensions. That it's we can all do it now. We have everything that we need to do this, to do it now for ourselves. And we don't have to kind of seek without. We can just do it here and now in this lifetime. If we so it's kind of inspiring in that way, I think.
Yes, so you don't have you don't have to first fulfill the spiritual fantasy of becoming like this godlike spiritual being in human form. You don't have to have all those amazing other skills, that it's okay just essentially to be you. And, you know, some spiritual paths teach those other things first, and okay, fair enough. But what is this God Rohitassa saying? Well, it's exactly what Mark's saying. It's like, well, I've done all that, and that's not the answer, because it's still traveling. And so you've got to stop. That's another way of looking at it. You've got to stop. You've got to stop the wheel of becoming. And so the question is, well, how do you stop the wheel of becoming? You stop it by investigating the true nature of your conscious experience. Like, you're not looking for something to happen. Nibbana isn't going to happen somewhere down the line. This is Nibbana. You're just looking at it incorrectly because your perceptions and your views aren't in alignment with reality. And so that's what drives the sense in which there's something wrong. And that drives then behavior based on that assumption. Behavior in body, speech, and mind. And the formulation of the idea of the world as this solid, separate, external thing that you operate within, it's on that assumption that the wheel turns and turns and turns and turns. But is it really like that? That's what we're asking. That's what the practice is asking. And so we explore the nature of mind and body as it's unfolding in real time in order to test those assumptions. Is it really like that? And it's through that process of observing phenomena arising and passing away, phenomena arising, passing away, and seeing. I was speaking to one of the meditators who had been looking at the breathing process and had sufficient concentration to see that what he thought was a flowing movement in time and space was actually made up. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it was made up of these granular moments of experience that went nowhere. They just a moment of materiality that just arose and passed away. And it was followed by another moment of experience, which was self-similar. It appeared to be the same thing with a slight variation that appeared and then disappeared. But it wasn't happening anywhere. It was just arising and passing away, arising and passing away. It wasn't happening anywhere in time and space. There was a further perception that would then place it in time and space. There was a whole succession of moments of experience, which, if they were observed somewhat loosely, then appeared very much to be the movement of the breath. And the perceptions of where that was taking place was forming in that moment. And that was great for me to hear that, because that means that he's really seeing that indeed the whole notion of time and space are being manufactured, created in the moment. So he's approaching the point where he's beginning to see the end of the world, that the end of the world is right here. It's in every moment there is the arising and then the passing away. And the perception aspect is what's creating this sense of movement through time and space. They're just perceptions, it turns out. And so it's at that point where our former notion of the nature of reality starts to crumble and fall away, which can sound a bit scary, but the thing is, life carries on, and it all carries on beautifully, and it turns out it's all happening by itself, which is marvelous and wonderful. But you realize that you are at the edge of the world every moment, if I can put it like that. That's what the insight practice will start to show you, that you are at the cutting edge of existence. You're right at the edge of the world at all moments, just rising and passing away and being weaved together through conditions. It's the most marvelous thing. So it's not that we're talking about the end of the world in any catastrophic sense. We're seeing that life is indeed, every component part of life is indeed arising and passing away, and there is nothing to cling to. There is no world to hang on to. There is no necessity to feel that you have to hang on to the world. You can let go. And it's in the letting go of this obsession with the world that what lies beyond the world can then be truly comprehended. Sally. Hello.
Hello. Great.
Another
I was just
frown.
lots on points. So in the last bit, so an intelligent person understanding the world, is he referring to something you mentioned on a previous talk on a night or months and months ago about it's all very well to have an intellectual understanding of what's going on, but until you actually really accept that it's going on, you're never going to get there. So the calm person, is that the person that's truly accepting the teachings, not the person that's learning about the teachings and looking like they're ticking every box and, oh, I know the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, I tick, 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 I know all the hindrances, tick, tick, tick. Yeah, you can know that till the cows come home, but unless you can actually accept and see it for what it is.
Well, accepting,
Study it.
slightly challenged by the word you've used. No acceptance is required. It's not accepting it to be so. It is seeing that it is so. It is a complete realization and recognition. So irrespective of what anyone says, and this is why I'm so strong on everyone has to follow their path. Everyone has to approach this in the way that they approach it, and the teacher can help guide it. But it's everyone's individual exploration for them to discover the true nature for themselves, because it cannot be communicated properly. It requires that willingness to explore directly, and come to that direct comprehension yourself. So what's translated as intelligent, I would say wise, because wisdom isn't an accumulation of knowledge like book reading. Wisdom is seeing the truth of it as it's unfolding. Yeah. So that's the only sort of bone of contention I'd have with what you said. But fundamentally, yes, book learning. If book learning could really produce the end of suffering, the Buddha would simply have written a book, and we would read the book, and we'd all go, "Oh yeah." But the whole of the Pali Canon is him trying to explain it. So yeah, we have to be willing to look directly for ourselves. As long as we do that, we're fine. Does that cover it, Sally?
Thank you.
Yeah. And Les, hello.
Hello. I was going to say, it's a bit like you can read all about coffee, you can research it, you can talk to other people that have drunk it, you can all about it. Until you actually taste it yourself, you don't know what coffee is.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so Buddhas do but point the way, and they point the way very, very clearly. On last Wednesday we had a Q&A, and I was talking about views and the inherent nature of all descriptions to be inaccurate. All descriptions are inaccurate. It's just on a sliding scale of degree of inaccuracy. None of them are truth. So it's just choosing your views wisely to get the least inaccurate views and work off those. And so anyone who is practicing insight meditation, for instance, will hear all about transience, will hear all about unsatisfactoriness and the ungraspable nature of phenomena, and not self and conditionality. But it's a completely different order of experience or different order of knowledge when you get a direct insight into transience, or a direct insight into unsatisfactoriness, or a direct insight into not self. It's a completely different order of comprehension and understanding. Yeah, completely different. And the former doesn't set you free. Just the book learning, the intellectual appreciation cannot set you free, because it's more travel. If you think about it in the context of the sutta, that book learning is just more travel, isn't it? It's just like the accumulation of knowledge, of worldly knowledge, in whatever form. And what we're talking about is direct insight into the true nature of reality through this process of mindful noting of phenomena. Yeah, which is a completely different order of comprehension. So, okay, so the Buddha ends the, I'll just repeat the last verse, see if there's anything we can bring out from that. The end of the world can never be reached by traveling, but without reaching the end of the world, there is no release from suffering. So I hope I've put that across, that the end of the world is happening in every moment. But because of our obsession with conceptualizing this world, we're constantly reinforcing the idea that there is this solid, inherently real, unbreakably real reality, which is around us all the time. But the more you look with insight, the more you realize that that's this most wonderful, cosmic, elaborate illusion. And because we recognize how impossible it is to gain that lasting fulfillment through trying to manipulate phenomena, we give up our obsession. The mind just totally relaxes, completely relaxes from attempting to gain anything in any way at all. And so the mind finally rests in its essential and innate nature. And it's at that point there is the recognition of what lies beyond the world. Right? Now, I should point out for clarity that that's not that you know, like the mundane world pops up again. It's not like you don't get to go down the shops anymore. Of course you do, but now you're dealing with it in a completely different way. You see the inherent emptiness of it. It's got no intrinsic essential reality. It's just all appearance. But the way I like to put it across more recently is that you see it all as the dance or the song of infinite mystery, that even something as mundane as going down the shops to do some shopping is now seen as an expression of infinite mystery. So everything that's unfolding right now is just an expression of infinite mystery, and the infinite mystery cannot be contained and it cannot be known. It is expressed for its finite displays, and this is its finite display. Conscious experience is the finite display of the infinite mystery. But because of the tendency to grasp after phenomena as being me or mine or myself, we don't see it as infinite mystery. And that's the terrible shame. But for somebody who follows this training to the end, they see that whatever is occurring is an elaborate cosmic hoax, but it's beautiful, it's wondrous, and it is the continual arising of infinite mystery being expressed through conscious experience. And it's glorious. Okay, so the wise person or the intelligent person understanding the world. So it's not some total end, it's not an annihilation or anything. It is the understanding of the world. It's finally having the right context for everything that appears to go on. It's seeing it in its true context, right? Such a person has completed the spiritual journey because they've got that understanding. So they're free to play. They're free to play. So they completed the spiritual journey and gone to the end of the world. They've seen where the world ends and they see what lies beyond it. A calm one. Why are they calm? Such a person is calm because then it's not that they're just resting in this state of, permanent serenity. They could be quite chirpy or agitated or, move about a lot, but they're calm. They're calm in the core of their being is absolutely calm because they have understood the true nature of the world and they've understood what lies beyond the world. Knowing the end of the world does not long for this world or the next. Now, that needs a little bit of clarification. It's like you can look forward to your summer holiday. You can be enlightened and look forward to your summer holiday. It's that you don't hanker, you're not looking for the world to provide you with anything anymore. Not on that deep level, not on that deep existential level. So you look forward to things, you enjoy things, but you don't grasp after things and you don't cling to things of the world anymore. So there's this lovely deep inner calmness. So like on the surface of the ocean, it can be quite restless, but in the depths, it's lovely and calm and peaceful because there is this true knowledge of the world, being able to see in its true context, right? And so there's no longing, there's no sense in which I need this in order to be happy. Yeah, all that has completely gone because it's seen that the world, as ordinarily understood, is a world of appearances. It has no depth to it. Well, it's magnificent, it's marvelous, it's astonishing, it's strange, it's mysterious, but still you don't hanker after it, you don't cling to it, you don't need it for anything. And all the stories that we're told about all the problems in the world and everything that's going on, in one sense, you see, absolutely, yeah, that's all going on. And in another sense, you know absolutely that none of it has any fundamental reality. And so that makes for a very different experience of life. And so in that sense, the wheel of rebirth has been completely transcended. Completely transcended. So because that world of rebirth has been seen to be this elaborate cosmic hoax. After all, it has no fundamental reality to it whatsoever. And you can play in the world to a lesser or greater degree based on your personal proclivities. And that can change over time as well. So it can be like there can be the thought, well, I still have to keep this going and I have to keep that going and all these worldly things going. But over time, you start to recognize that, yeah, even that, I could just, you don't need to hang on to any of that really. It's just a personal decision, personal choice. Any thoughts? Do you realize I'd rather gone for it this evening? Giuseppe, okay.
One thing that seemed to stick out, apart from everything that he said, which was absolutely amazing, there seems to be a lot of fear when you were talking about, seeing the end of the world. That seemed to come up in my mind, and I just thought, well, that could be one of the blocks, I guess, to seeing things
Oh yes.
as they are, because it's quite scary to think. But then I also think that's a ridiculous way to look at it. Like, it should be embraced. That isn't it wonderful? You're seeing something scary. But
Well, can I put it a slightly different way for you?
yes, please.
I never know quite whether this metaphor works or not, but if you imagine pure light being passed through a prism, and as it passes through the prism, it creates this spectacular multiplicity of color, a rainbow, in any other words, a rainbow. But there's just, you get all the diversity, you get all the frequency range of everything from this pure light passing through this prism. Okay, if you take that analogy or metaphor or whatever it is, and you say, well, the infinite mystery is like the pure light. It passes through the prism and creates all the possible aspects of mind and body, the aggregates. So it includes knowing and the known. So the moment of consciousness and the object that the moment of consciousness knows. They're like colors in the rainbow.
Yeah.
Right? The perception that arises is like a color in the rainbow. And it includes all the states of mind like tranquility, happiness, pleasurable interest, equanimity. They're all colors in the rainbow. But the colors of the rainbow also include worry, doubt, irritation, fear. And the problem is not the arising of fear, because the fear is just a color in the rainbow of, of this pure light passing through the prism. It's that you don't see that it's that, because you identify it as being me, my fear, or fear happening to me.
Yes.
You don't see it as infinite mystery being expressed. You see it as fear. And then there's a tendency to believe the content of the thinking and not see that the content of the thinking. So the knowing of the fear is just the expression of infinite mystery.
Mm.
The arising of the content, whatever the narrative is just the arising of infinite mystery. But for you, looking at it from your side, it looks like annihilation. But that's on the premise that there is something to be annihilated.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, Paul. That definitely has hit the nail on the head at the right time. I mean, again, I know we talked about this before as well, but it's like the book learning, the discussion, everything. It's so important. But it's then, oh my goodness, coming to see exactly what you're saying. It is very different and can be very, well, as we all know, it's very challenging at times, and I'm very grateful to be able to ask you about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Giuseppe. Look, I mean, the spiritual path is tough, the true spiritual path. I mean, if all people want is to realize the spiritual fantasies, then this probably isn't for them. And and if you read this sutta correctly, then you know that the spiritual fantasy is just yet more travel on the illusory world, in the illusory world. And it's just whether somebody is ready to move beyond that and to be willing to question more deeply. And there are all the associated practices that come with the Buddha's teaching. You're not left in this kind of like vacuum. You live by the precepts, you develop parami, you practice loving kindness and compassion. There are all these ancillary techniques that can be employed to give you a real sense of the world as you understand it, as being a benevolent place with flaws and that can give you that cushioning effect that then allows you to sit and rest in the moment, observing things arise and pass away. And if fear comes up, then welcome it. Welcome it. It's a transient phenomenon that arises due to conditions and ceases. It's a finite expression of infinite mystery. What's the problem? So, all right. Well, I think we should leave it there. Mark, you have a question. Yeah. A final thought.
Paul, yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Everything seemed very relevant this evening and pertinent. Just a very practical thing. How often should we be noting sort of within the practice, the seated practice, versus going about our everyday business? Yeah.
Whenever you remember. Because mindfulness is synonymous with remembrance. So it's just remembering to do it. You know, obviously there are certain tasks that we perform which are more difficult to practice mindful observation of phenomena arising and passing away, but there are others where it's very straightforward. You know, just walking to your car or taking the dog for a walk or doing the washing up. It's just remembering. And so the seated practice is developing the knowledge of how to do it and what to look at. And it obviously takes you deeper into it because you can get more focused and more concentrated. But inevitably, if you practice for half an hour a day, as a minimum, seated practice, gradually over time, it will start naturally seeping into other aspects of your life. It starts to become second nature if you persist with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, look, I think we're going to get chucked off of Zoom very shortly, so I think we'll call it a day there. Lovely to see you all. We'll get back for another chat in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul.
Jay. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.